Hey everyone, welcome back to round 5 analysis of my chess tournament in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Today we have a crazy game that I played against a certain Floris Goldback. Before the game, a fan came up to me and said, you know, he is the best of our club. If you beat him, you're the best of our club. During the video, you may see one or many boats pass through me, just like here, but that's part of the experience of filming a recap in Amsterdam itself. I go up to my board and my opponent is like 6'8". This guy was humongous. And I didn't know because he was sat down, but you always know when they shake your hand. I shook my hand, I swear to you. His hand is like this, bruv. So I start off with my typical e4, my opponent goes c5, and this marks the start of a Sicilian defense. Now, I have a lot of experience against this, so I go with just typical knight f3 and then d4. We trade in the center, and this marks the start of a Taimanov variation, one of the most important findings in the Sicilian defense for the black pieces against what is a very spacious development and very nice opening for the white pieces. Here, knight c6 attacks my knight, and right off the bat here, I don't go with the very common and theoretical knight c3 because I prepped all morning against something completely different. In the Sicilian, I saw that his latest game was after knight f3 g6, which is the accelerated dragon, and this is completely different than what we played in the game. So anyways, I was not prepared to play this, so I play some really subtle lines that are out of book, and he told me that after queen c7 he was confused after only bishop d3, a6, and then knight b3. 3 inaccurate moves in the past 4 moves in this opening. Amazing. He was completely confused, he told me after the game, after knight b3. Knight b3 aims to just take up the c5 square and really illuminates my bishop on that diagonal, and you'll see that diagonal becomes really important. b5, a good move by black to get their bishop out on this very large diagonal and to just mark a lot of territory, notably taking up c4 and a4 squares. But I go with a4 because I really wanted this c4 square for an eventual knight to go to c4 and then b6, or to target b6 with my knight and bishop, etc. He should have taken, says the computer. So this, and it would have been quite equal, but after b4, I played the correct move a5 here. a5 is a tremendous strategical move. This aims to not only prevent black from solidifying their pawn structure here with a5, but also prevents black's light squared bishop from being activated later on in the game and playing bishop a6, trading off my exquisite light squared bishop for this terrible bishop on c8. Knight f6, I go f4, and this is just to combat a potential d5. So let's say d5 is played here, I can go e5 attacking this knight, knight would go back, and in the future I would have f5 things attacking the king, pawn storm. So this didn't happen, instead my opponent played e5, which I looked at, but you're moving a pawn twice in the opening is never a really good answer. And it looks kind of funky here because black is giving up the d5 square, which is what you do in the Taimanov. You take up the d5 square with the e6 push. That's why you push the pawn. So pushing the pawn twice is really dubious at best. Though I didn't play the best thing because it's hard to find the idea that's super better here. White has a better position after bishop b6 attacking the queen, and then you go f5, you push the f pawn, and it's not even to cement the d5 square because you give black d5. That's what's so counterintuitive here, and that's why I didn't play f5. It's because it gives black a lot of juice attacking e4, pressuring f5 behind that e4 pawn, and the simple answer to everything is knight 1d2, and after takes, knight takes e4, and you cannot take this pawn because of knight takes f6 check, discovered attack on this bishop, g takes, and you win a free piece. So here, black can't take on f5, and white's pieces are super nice playing against this bishop, threatening to take this knight. I mean, I'm looking at bishop e7 here, and it looks like this is just winning for white, says the computer. After takes, bishop e4, and a lot is happening on these two pieces. None of this happened though. I played a more obvious move, which is castles. I'm simply defending my pawn here, and when you take, if you take, I take. By the way, castles has per idea to open up the F file for later intentions on the king. So there is not only a defensive motive there, but also an attacking one. And so after takes, I take with the bishop and attack this queen, a tempo move. I don't want my opponent to castle here. So I'm playing against my opponent's castling chances. And so here, bishop d6 to the block, but the better move here is actually d6. A weak d-pawn making its entry on the scene, activating this bishop was better, which is surprising because I calculated bishop d6, and after takes, I really like my position because of this one move that gives white a better position. And that's knight 1d2. Yes, knight 1d2, because there's two knights that can possibly go to d2. So knight 1d2 has per only objective to go to c4, and it's so strong because only one piece can prevent knight c4 on tempo on this queen in the next move. Let's say you ignore the knight c4 idea by castles. I can go knight c4, queen e7, and not only are all my pieces already nice, but I even have knight b6 ideas. And this low-key wins a pawn here on c8 by trading and then taking on a6, with a dangerous pass pawn at that. So obviously there are some minuscule threats here. And so black plays the only move that defends c4. The problem with this is that I play knight c4 anyways. If takes, I take with the bishop, showdown between my two queens, and if you take now and go into an endgame, which I calculated and really liked for the white pieces, the engine agrees, I have really nice threats like e5 to just win f7. You can't take on e4 here because of bishop d5. And the goal is, I have a lot of space, I play against this bishop, and I pressure d7 and f7, and the white pieces seem to be doing very well here. Knight g4 are this is small threats because I have checking things, and then I can defend here the fork. It would be completely winning. So my opponent didn't like this idea at all. And here, after knight c4, they played queen b8. After a very long time of thinking, look at that on the screen. 15 minutes of thinking, more, 18 minutes, queen b8. So they really didn't like the endgame idea, and they go with queen b8. The king is still in the center. The black pieces are barely developed. What is the intention here? Just to develop this knight? And so I go with a quick response. No, I really don't actually. After 20 minutes of thinking, I go queen takes e5, knight takes e5, queen takes e5, and then rook f5, attacking this queen. And the idea is that the queen goes back, and now I have so much space in the center. The king is still not developed, and nor is this bishop. I can indulge with e5 here, attacking this knight. And now the knight suddenly does not have many squares. All the arrows I'm doing right now are knight moves that cannot happen because I can take the knight one way or the other. So the knight only has d5 and g8. And I calculated that on knight d5, I simply have queen f3. And look at this beautiful pin here. It's really hard to defend this. If you go bishop e7, bishop e4, and you cannot defend this anymore. Queen here, rook d1. It's over. The pin is completely done. And so knight c7 I saw to defend the rook, and I really liked my position. After bishop c4, it's pretty much over. So here my opponent played knight g8. Here, it's +4 for the white pieces. Completely winning after only 18 moves. So on knight g8, I was ready to play bishop e4. And this is not a good move. Instead, my opponent after the game told me I have a better move with queen f3 attacking the rook. The rook would move, and then queen g3, masterpiece. You see, I had seen queen f3, but I was scared that after rook b8, and scared is the key word here that made me not play this, and that is bad. Take out the fear by calculating through it. On rook b8, I was scared that black would gain some fuel with bishop b7 attacking my queen and then developing on tempo, which is my biggest fear in this position, as I do not want to wake up the black pieces. But here I have queen g3, attacking g7 and threatening things like the likes of e6 to attack this rook by discovered attack. Crazy, right? And on knight h6 here, yes, I have queen takes. I also have this nifty move, rook h5. And you can never attack my rook because I take. And on castles, the king would be on g8. And now I can take this knight and the pawn is pinned to the king. The other great move is queen g4 directly, attacking this. On g6, which was another thing I was scared of, but really, you need to look past this, because although rook f2, d6 or d5, and then I have queen c4, and apparently white is completely dominant. And also I was scared of this because of discoveries like this, pinning my two pieces, but I just have queen takes g7, and it's just fear. You just need to calculate through it. And I did not do that well here. I played bishop e4, still very dominant, rook b8, engine gives +3 after queen d4, really strong. I'm threatening queen a7, and then knight h6. And here I miss a super good move. Try to find it, it's super obscure. Here we just want to go rook h5. Preventing that g6 move once again because we take the knight. And if you castle here, apparently bishop d3 and knight c5 is so hard to defend a6 against that it's pretty much over here, which is obscene. Also, we're threatening queen e4, which I think is really strong. And it's hard to defend h7. On g6, we just take. I played the third best rook move in this position, rook f4. And after castles, I go queen d6. You see, I have had enough of this game, and I wanted to trade queens to get into a favorable endgame, because I let the black pieces castle and somewhat develop. I mean, this knight is completely out of play, but they're developed, and I was frustrated against this. And I reckoned that this endgame was better for white. And it is. After takes, it's really hard to take this pawn. This bishop is absolutely glued to c8. This pawn is extremely loose. We can just grab it with like a bishop d3 and then a knight c5, or at least pressure it to a very sufficient amount. We were calculating after the game rook b5, but after bishop d3, rook d5, rook d4, we just trade here, and these pawns will not last. I'm reckoning rook a4, rook takes, and then rook b6, and it would be completely over here. So I did a really good decision with queen d6, and my opponent refused the queen trade into a mistake. The queen trade was my opponent's best deal out of this, and they go for queen g5. Wow. Attacking my rook. And I was like, it's fine here. I just go rook f1, and I'm completely fine. And my opponent goes rook b5, which is the logical move. Black wants to attack e5 to get me to defend so that their pieces can eventually amount to something in life. Here, I missed a tactic that was bad. Let me say that again. I missed a tactic that was bad. And I saw it afterwards. The tactic is bishop takes h7. And the reason it's bad is after king takes and we win the exchange with queen takes f8, here black has amazing counter-attacking chances with bishop b7. This bishop was attacked, so you're moving the attacked bishop into a threat of checkmate, rook f2, and then knight g4, and black has full compensation here. The game is equal. Insane. I played knight c5, which is all the same, a really good move, kind of attacking these weak pawns, but also mainly blocking this e5 threat. g6 is played. This is a desperate move by the black pieces. Here, they see that bishop d5 is coming, and I'm going on f7, so g6 is played here so that the knight can block the f-file with knight f5. Here I have a win. I have a forced win. It's super hard to find, and I took a lot of time here. Obviously, I have 22 minutes, and my opponent has 12 minutes. Here I have the nifty bishop d3, which I thought of in the game, but not for the motives that are winning here for the engine. After rook takes, which is pretty much forced, I was thinking to trap the rook with queen b6 and then rook a2, and then I thought of knight e4, but I didn't like queen takes e5, so I eventually didn't do it. This is still like +3 for white. It's really strong. But after rook takes, the engine says h5, queen h5. If the queen goes to g3, attacking the queen, queen e3, letting in a check. And after king h2, the white pieces are absolutely dominant on these squares on the king, and it's ultimately winning. Queen h5 is the variation, and then bishop c4, and here white are entirely fine. You can't play bishop c4 directly here before playing h4 because of knight f4. But in this variation, if h4 queen here and now bishop c4, knight f5, now we have queen c7. And this is really important because in the game, I played bishop d5, which has a similar idea to get the knight here to e4 and then escalate it to f6 while blocking the e5 pawn from the rook and queen to connect. But after knight f5, which I let in, my queen has to move, and now queen d8. And so if I had played h4 first, queen h5, and the queen can never go to d8 to defend. And I completely missed this queen d8, and now the game is equal. Here, it's such a crucial moment. I have 4 moves that retain the advantage. Bishop d3, h4, knight d3, and h3. That's it. And after queen c7, queen d8, I have to trade or put my queen on a7, which I'm not doing. Queen a7 is better for black because I'm giving this and now queen e7 here and just everything falls apart, right? So with low time, I have 9 minutes to his 5. I trade on d8 and then I go for knight e4. You cannot take this bishop because I have knight f6, which forks your king and rook here on d5. So my opponent goes out of that fork and that check on f6. And now I go with c4, defending my bishop, and I had seen that en passant is forced, knight takes c3, and then rook takes one of the 2 pawns here on a5 or b2. The only thing is, and now I'm spitballing it. I'm going completely improvising because my plans are ruined. Queen d8, I didn't see. I'm into an endgame with a pawn down. What is going on? And in this position, I find something that's not bad. I play g4 first. I want to get the knight out. And the knight has to defend against f7. And now I have a brilliant idea, a great idea. And with 3 minutes on the clock, I decide to go with this insane, critical, game-deciding idea, not fully prepped it. I'm basically winging it at the moment. Rook takes f7, sacrificing the rook. So here, I'm sacrificing the exchange. This is called the positional sacrifice for the weakness of this king here. I had seen, quickly calculated, I have 3 minutes on the clock. I quickly calculated that the king has 3 options here. Let's look at them. King h8, which loses beautifully to knight e4. And then after rook takes, you have knight f6. This is what I had calculated. And here, apparently this is a draw, which I had not seen. This is the only way that this draws for black. King g2, and then rook d2 check. And I can't go up ever because of check. And if I go king g2, let's say, bishop b7 check, which gives h3, which then black can defend. You see, if they can't defend on the h file, this pawn, it's mate next move. That's what's so strong about this knight and rook here. And so now, my king would just go to g1, check, king f2, check, king here, and never go to g3 because of that chance of the rook going on h2 or on h3. Insane. We both missed that resource for black. And on king g8, I thought, you know, I just have discovered checks, which are really nice. If the king goes here, I have the same resource like this with the same try of winning. Apparently here, it's just winning for white with like b4 first. And the second that the rook is off of this knight, I can go like knight e4 and then knight f6, and you can't really stop it, which is really cool. But here I had seen like king f8, and we take here. And I have at least a draw with enough compensation for the piece sacrificed. My opponent goes with the king h6, probably the most fireworksy move on the board. And here, I have to go with h4. I mean, there's no other way I continue playing this without playing h4. h4 threatens some really good things. Let's say that my opponent plays a random move like rook c5. I play g5 check, king h5, and now I have rook f4. Threatening checkmate on f3. You can't defend against this unless you sack my bishop. And then knight takes, and this king is such an mating net that after my knight takes back that rook, I'm threatening mate again on f6. And you can't defend against it. You can play this, but I have knight f6 check, and I'm gonna queen my pawn, and it's pretty over. h4 threatening g5. In my head, it was not as clear. I only saw that later on while calculating on his time. But let's say rook c5, this is what I had prepared. Check, king here, and then I had check again, forcing king takes h4, and then I had knight e4. Here I'm threatening mate, and let's say they defend mate with like rook h8. This is what I had in my head with 2 minutes on the clock. I had mate in 2 with check, king here, and then bishop g2 checkmate. That's what I was thinking about. But none of this is as accurate as just the subtle rook f4 that wins. So my opponent has to go g5 on h4 to defend. And so now I do check, forcing this king move to check again, just giving him the option to try any other moves, but he goes back, so he's offering the draw. This is a great sign. This in chess means you have at least a draw. It's called having the draw in hand. So I have the draw in hand here, and it's completely winning for the white pieces, but I don't know this. I have 2 minutes on the clock. My opponent has 1:30. What would you do in this position? Would you take the draw against a player who has 100+ rating points over you, or would you go for the win? And in this position, I declined the draw with h5. You see, the draw was offered without speaking, but the draw was offered on the board. By repeating moves twice, you are asking your opponent if they would consider repeating the moves a third time, which goes to an automatic draw in chess. h5, however, disrupts that cycle of repeating moves and instead further nestles this king into a mating net. And it looks like it does nothing. But in this position, it's completely winning for the white pieces. Why? White is threatening bishop e4 here. Threatening checkmate. It's a threat of a threat of a threat. Threatening checkmate on this very foreign square on h7 is only defendable by one move, rook h8. Pinning a rook to a very bad square like h8 is something amazing in chess. You want to do that as much as you can. Added to the fact, let's say rook c5 is played, that I have bishop e4 threatening mate, forcing rook h8, and now I have rook f6 check, king g7 check with h-pawn, forcing king g8, and now I have bishop g5 checkmate mimicking, forcing rook takes, and then knight takes, and you can't stop mate in 1 on the next move. And even if it was not mate, this rook is absolutely trapped. So my opponent goes with d6. I wonder if I still have this. No, I don't, because of rook d7. So d6 has per idea to go rook d7 here. I'm glad I didn't play that. Instead, I played the very logical e6. Not taking this pawn, but creating another one pass pawn for myself, threatening e7, and now the threat on h7, which is coming up as well. 2 threats on the board as once is twice as strong as 1 threat on the board. Rook e8 played to play against this pawn. I just go with bishop e5 here. Really, really strong. What I'm saying is you can't take my pawn either way because there's a greater threat on the board that forces a move that I know the exact nature of. Rook h8 is played, it's forced, otherwise it's checkmate. And now I missed big time. Oh, I missed big time. But I have 1 minute on clock at this point. The sage knight d5. I was weighing knight d5 and e7. The sage knight d5 is so strong, it prevents the rook coming in, and we're threatening check, king here, check, king here, and then e7, and just like we said before, there's mates on the board. Such a strong move. I was debating that, but I thought it was too slow. You see, I had the optical illusion that in this position, I needed to play quick and make for time. Play quick on the board, not because of the time. That too, but you understand what I'm saying. So I played e7 here. Quick, because I need to threaten this to win a piece or mate the king as fast as I can. And by the way, I'm just realizing this now. Takes, bishop is mate. Memes to be done. Okay, so e7, my opponent goes with rook e5, which is really good, but now I have rook f8, which was always my plan. I had incorporated that, embedded that rook e5 would be played, and then rook f8. If you take, I have mate with the promoting to a bishop, and if you take here, I take this, and then bishop takes, and I'm up a full piece, I'm winning. So now my opponent finds the only move that is sensible to defend the rook. And I will be completely honest with you, I low-key missed this. I have a minute on the clock. I'm playing 1 move per 30 seconds. But here, grace be upon it. The king is locked to the pawn. So when the king moves, which is a piece that was in the grasp of my hand, this frees the pawn. So A escapes jail, B can also escape jail because A made a hole in the jail. You understand the logic? So king g7 blunders the entire game to h6, which I found immediately and played it on the board at once. And in this position, through a super weird whirlwind of, I was completely winning at the beginning and my position was skydiving little to little to little, and then I win at the end. Crazy turn of events. My opponent after the game was like, yeah, I had the same opposite feeling. My position was trash at the beginning, and little by little by little, it was going so well, and then at the end, it plummets. Crazy to see the two perspectives. Anyway, this wild game concludes my second victory in a row in the Amsterdam Chess Open after losing 2 in a row. And now, on paper, I have 3 out of 5 because of that first free point in round 2. I have 3 out of 5 in a tournament in which I was the lowest seed to start. And especially in a tournament in which I had 2 losses in a row. And I looked back at the documents. This is the first tournament I've ever had 2 losses in a row since my comeback to chess. So the mental resolve to get over the first rut, you could say, of my comeback to chess is huge for me. I hope you can see that in the games. I hope you can see that in the passion of the moves on the board. And I hope you can see that in the final round in which I'm paired against a 2200, our biggest challenge yet. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time. Peace.